In this video, we'll learn how to create a calculated value column in Loocey and go over the settings and options of calculated value columns. There are two ways to create a column in Loocey. We can either open the context menu of an existing column and click on Add Column to Right, then choose Calculated Value from the dropdown. Or we can click on the plus sign at the end of the table, select More Options, and then choose Calculated Value from the Column Type dropdown. In the Setup window, we add a display name, then choose where to put our formula. Client calculation works only in your browser for quick display, while backend does the calculation on the server, and it's best for integrations and reporting. For this demo, we'll do a few examples to show you how the calculations work. Let's say we want to create a full name from a first name and a last name. We'll create two text columns, first name and last name, and give them values. I'll set first name to David and last name to Miller. Now, let's add a new calculated value column, name it full name, and in the backend calculation field, type this formula, and just like that, Loocey combines them into David Miller. One important thing to note, calculation code works with the internal names of your columns, not the display names. For example, here our columns have internal names like first name and last name. To quickly verify, just open the column settings, you'll see the internal name right there. This step is very important because if you use the wrong name, your calculation won't work. Now, about formulas, both backend and client-side calculations are powered by popular frameworks, and each has its own documentation you can check. For client-side formulas, you can click the Nunjux link and explore examples on their site. And for backend calculations, click the Scribe-in link to see their documentation and more advanced use cases. Also, all the formulas from this video are listed in the description so you can copy and use them directly. Now, let's continue with our example. We can try entering another example, John for first name and Smith for last name, and we should see the full name column auto-populate based on our calculation. Now, let's show how many days are left until a due date using two date fields. First, we need to add our date columns. I'll go ahead and add the first one, set it to type date, and call it start date. Let's also assign an example value here so we can use it later. Now, let's add another date column. This one will be for the due date, so I'll name it due date. Again, I'll assign an example value. Next, add a calculated value column and name it days remaining. In the backend calculation type this calculates the difference between the two dates and shows the number of days remaining as a whole number. Again, if we change values, the calculation updates instantly. Sometimes we want to show numbers with their units, or maybe display totals with a currency sign. Let's start by creating a number column called quantity and enter an example value, say 12. Now, add a calculated value column, name it quantity label, and type this formula. The table now shows 12 pieces, much easier to read. Next, let's also create another number column called unit price and enter some example values, like 5. Now, add a new calculated value column, name it total, and we want to multiply quantity with unit price while also showing a $sign in front of the total number. Here's the formula. This way, the table displays results like $60, which makes totals clear at a glance. Again, if we change either quantity or unit price, the total updates instantly. Now, let's imagine we want to create dynamic, personalized messages, something you could even use for emails or SMS campaigns. Instead of writing messages one by one, we can build a template and let the system fill in the details automatically from our table. For this example, let's create a column called username and enter a value, for instance, Alex. Next, we'll add a calculated value column, name it greeting, and type this formula. And right away, the table shows, "Hello, Alex." This is a really simple case, but you can already see how it makes the table more user-friendly, especially for customer-facing dashboards or message preparation. And of course, if we change the input value in the user name column, the personalized greeting updates instantly. Let's say we already have two date columns in our table. One is the order date, and the other is the delivery due date. Now, we want to calculate how many days remain before the delivery is due. To do this, we add a new calculated value column and name it lead time. In the formula box, we type, this formula takes the difference between the two dates and gives us the number of days in between. So now, the table shows exactly how many days are left until the delivery date. And just like before, if we change the order date or the delivery due date, the lead time column will update automatically. For this next example, let's calculate a total price that includes tax and make sure it's rounded to 2 decimal places. First, I'll create 3 number columns, one for item quantity, one for item price, and another one for tax rate %. Let's give them some example values. I'll set the quantity to 2, the price to 5, and the tax rate to 10. Now, I'll add a new calculated value column and call it total with tax. In the backend calculation, I'll type this formula, and just like that, the table shows the result, instantly calculating the total based on our values. Notice how the formula multiplies quantity by price, applies the tax percentage, and then uses math. Round to keep only 2 decimals. And of course, if I change any of the scores, the average updates right away. For our next example, we're going to calculate a final due date that considers both the vendor's lead time and our own lead time. First, let's set up the columns. I'll start with a date column named award date. For this demo, I'll enter August 20, 2025. Next, I'll add a number column called vendor lead time and give it a value of 10. Then another number column called our lead time with a value of 5. And total of 15 days. Now let's calculate the final due date. I'll add a calculated value column and name it final due. In the backend calculation, type this formula, and now the table shows the result. The formula calculates the final due date by adding the vendor and our lead times together and then adding that total number of days to the award date. For our last example, let's calculate an average score from multiple columns. I'll start by creating 3 number columns, score 1, score 2, and score 3. Let's fill them in with some values, for example 80, 90, and 75. Now, I'll add a new calculated value column and call it average score. In the backend calculation, I'll type this formula, and now the table shows the result. This formula simply adds the 3 scores together, divides by 3, and rounds to 1 decimal place. And of course, if I change any of the scores, the average updates right away. Check the video description for all formulas you can copy directly. That's it for this video, and you can find more examples on the documentation website for the different calculation frameworks used. Let's look at some of the other options while adding columns. The following examples will be for string column, but the options work the same way for other types as well. You can set a default value for a string column so that it's used for all new rows created in this list. For example, if you want every new row to start with a specific label like new entry, you can enter that here. This way, each time you create a new row, the string column will automatically be filled with that unless you change it manually. Next, the required option, just like the name implies, makes a column a required field when creating or updating records. By default, the name column is required. If we want to mark the string column as required, we'll also need to set a default value. This ensures the column always has a valid entry when new records are created. If we mark another column, in this case, string, as required, the add item input box will change into a button link. Then, when we click on either the add item link or the new button at the top, the system will open a dialog showing all required column inputs. Let's add another record and enter the values for the required columns in the dialog, then click on Create. The record will be added along with the values for all the required columns. This design of keeping track of required columns helps keep our table consistent and prevents invalid data entries. The isNull flag is a somewhat technical term, which simply means that if no default value is entered, this column will allow nulls instead of a value. Again, this is a database term, and it's okay if you leave it the default. Note that when we switch off the isNull option, the default value field will become required, as now the column requires a default value. This is because if you already have data in your list and if you turn off the null option, this column will need to be populated with another value, otherwise, we would get an error in the database. That's it for today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to be notified when we release new tutorials. Thanks for watching and see you next time.